Hey everyone, today I've got a very special guest. We're going to go over something that I think has been plaguing a lot of people when they're making the decision of what to do after beating Dark Dimension 2. And so it's kind of a new player to mid-game, how to approach the next strategy. And I'm going to introduce you guys to Philosopher. If you guys don't know, we've been making a lot of videos on the channel together featuring new players. Say hi, Philosopher.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, man. So I'm looking at your DD3 theory, and I love what you've done because again, you went through DD4, you went through kind of a maximizing your roster from the value perspective, and you're kind of cracking out. But you've also, because of that, you've also gained a lot of insight on what the under 300 player looks at and needs to value. So let's go through it. Let's go through this really quickly and kind of walk me through each reflection at a time.
Yeah, sure. So one thing I'll just say that underlies this entire infographic is that you want to use the same characters for DD2, DD3, and DD4. So if you're a newer player, plan ahead and use characters that work in all three of those dark dimensions. And if you use the characters in this infographic, they work in all of them. That's one thing that's important here. You don't need a full team for each one of the sections in DD3. That's different than DD4, where you're going to need 4 characters per section. So you're going to choose your first 5, which are listed here, and then you can choose, you need at least 3 in global, at least 3 in cosmic, at least 2 in city. But the reason that we have very specific characters chosen here is because DD3 can be difficult if you bring the wrong characters in.
Yeah, we've been talking about that for a while. So just remember, guys, if this is more than 6 months, if you guys check the date, if you see more than 6 months, it may have been updated by us. So check for a newer video on either mine or Philosopher's channel. You guys will see the links to Philosopher's Twitch and YouTube in the comments section or in the description below. So let's get right to it. So it looks like reflection number 1, you don't need a full team for each section. Yeah, you can get by with 3 global and cosmic and 2 in city, but it'll be harder than using a full team. I think that's important to know.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, the bottom line is, if you're just going to use 2 symbiotes in city, it's going to take you a little while, but you don't need to wait. There's sometimes new players feel the need to build 5 global characters to try to get through the section. You don't need to do that. You can get through, particularly if you have some of the strongest characters over to the left, you're going to get through the nodes just fine.
Yeah, because I noticed, and we're going to showcase this in a minute, some of these characters actually drain, and as a percentage drainer, do more damage than any combination without that. And we'll talk about that in a moment. DD3 is punishing, so many characters will not do well there, and I agree 100%.
Yeah, exactly. DD4 is a little bit more forgiving once you get your characters at G15. I think you have a little bit more flexibility there, but in DD3, I think if particularly as a newer player, if you're not bringing the right characters, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah, I think DD3 was, we call it negative progress, or more importantly, so if you guys don't know, there's Dutch Rudder has a guide, kind of walks through the way that the node shapes up and what drops, because there are some traps in there. What they did was they built global DD3, in case you guys didn't know, for the Phoenix factor, because Phoenix is so powerful. One of the reasons why she's featured so heavily in this infographic that Philosopher and who helped you with this one?
With Punk.
All right, Punk was awesome. So we'll definitely Punk, thoughts on this one as well. So I'm looking at the first 5, and I feel like these are, must have one with SSM. I think these are invaluable, right? Because these are the characters, and we're looking at 4 characters that feature drain right away. And I'm going to explain to you what that is, and then Philosopher's going to walk you through some of the choices here. So drain is a % drain skill. Minerva, Phoenix, Ghost, and Ebony Maw all have that skill. What it does is, because these characters have amplified health pools, they're draining either to support themselves or to support the team. They're draining that health as a percentage of the enemy team's health pool. So it's pretty significant amount of damage being done. So what's interesting about that is I was able to, on some nodes, I would just send Phoenix in there, have her go in and die, reset the node, either wait a day and wait for it to reset, or core it out if I was trying to rush through it. But that is something that was there. So I see you have Phoenix and Ghost. So you say one of those now? You don't need Phoenix anymore?
Yeah, I think you want one or the other. Realistically, could you get through this without them? Yes, but in order to do this in an efficient way, I think you want one of those two characters. And now Ghost is available in the War Store for newer players. I think that's a reasonable character to work on because she also helps you unlock a legendary.
Yeah, I think that's important too. And then we have Ebony Maw, which is locked behind a legendary. So there's a warning there. He's obviously important, but if you don't get Asgard and then Inhumans, you won't be seeing him on your roster. But realistically, you can get by with Minerva and Hela. Believe it or not, that's actually what a lot of us did in the early days, before the days of Ebony Maw, when he broke it open. So believe it or not, it can get done. There are some characters you can use to support him, but Ebony Maw does make it a lot easier. And then I do think Symbiote Spider-Man and either Anti-Venom or Carnage are both awesome choices. And you can literally go in with two. I actually did SSM and Carnage and walk through the city section relatively easy if you had Anti-Venom, or even if you have Anti-Venom over Carnage, you'll have the extra res and wait and be able to prevent heal block from certain characters. So really good choices right there. And so the reason why you did this is you thought about G13, so DD2, G14, DD4, and G15. Let me ask you this question. Do you think you can do the legendary without Phoenix section of DD4?
You can. It just would be harder. I think she's one of the cheapest characters. She's only 54 uniques, and she's really good. And I've actually, had players ask me about this recently because some of them want to bring in Jubilee, who doesn't perform that well in DD4. At least that's what the early reports are. She's a hero controller, don't forget. So that hurts when there's an enemy, Ebony Maw. I think Phoenix performs well, and she's 54 uniques. I don't see a reason not to bring Phoenix to DD4.
Yeah, so I actually brought Jubilee to DD4, but I also had Phoenix. I wouldn't bring I wouldn't bring Jubilee over Phoenix. I think you potentially could, but I think you would be slowing yourself down quite a bit for progress. But I do like that you have him ranked from left to right by priority and importance. And I noticed somebody he has fallen off here, which is Colossus, and I agree with you 100%. He has been diminished because he just isn't viable in DD4.
Yeah, that's the only reason. I relied on Colossus early on. I went through DD4 before there was ISO and so forth, and Colossus was an MVP, a co-MVP with Phoenix for me. But since you can't use it for DD4, I just think for newer players, you have to have that efficiency and gear to catch up to the rest of us that are already at the end game. So this is a way of doing that, making sure every character you bring to DD3 is also going to be brought to DD4.
Yeah, and so one other factor is we're taking a look at Shuri. So Shuri is somebody that I've always been kind of on the fence on, but what I will say is ISO, especially ISO level 4 in her, and has made her significantly better. One of her weaknesses was always her health pool, and then ISO 4 has actually been enough to kind of amplify her so she's not getting one shot on the node.
Well, absolutely. I had a different view of Shuri before they introduced the Greek raid sliders in Doom Raid. So now I use Shuri in all three Greek raids because I use her in tech nodes in alpha. I use her in the global lane that I'm on in the beta raid. And in Gamma, there's a lot of Wakanda nodes. Yeah. And on the Doom raid, I use her in the tech session. So she's got some real end game use.
Yeah, and that's one thing I'm going to say to this as well is I don't see any choices here that I'm not agreeing on, specifically thinking about end game rating down the road for those of you guys who are building a roster towards the end game. Once you get Dark Dimension 2, Dark Dimension 3, and potentially Dark Dimension 4 under your belt, it's going to be working with these teams. These characters will help your roster accomplish war, but more specifically, some of the end game raids that'll help you gear up your characters later on. The Cosmic section, I noticed, there it is, there they are. I knew the Dad Bros would be there. Yeah, there's going to be an unknown factor to X factor, but I tend to agree with that. I think that especially as a duo, right? Because they're the way that they work together in synergy, I think it's important. But yeah, a lot of mutants in your selections, but this is the first time we really, I think locked in on Cosmic Mutants as like the guys over here.
Yeah, I've got to say also, Reman, that right at this point in the game, there are more good mutants than any other origin at this point. Yeah. It's just the dominant origin, and these things go up and down. So, one thing you'll notice, there's only one X-Men in Astonishing X-Men in this entire group. And frankly, it'll be interesting to see in the months to come which of those two teams, X Factor or the X-Men, are going to be more powerful of those
Yeah,
mutant
we
teams.
have to see. There's some rumor, and we were talking a little about jumping the meta, but we'll definitely get more into that later on. So I'm going to show you guys. We've got the city. So these city are I think are really good. The one thing I might say is I would probably put Scream in front of Carnage. I feel like the offense down from Scream did me a lot better, especially on node 3 in DD4. And I think just from her overall cost, if you couldn't afford Carnage at G 14 or 15, I think Scream will still get it done for the most part for you.
That's an interesting debate, and that's one that I went back and forth on this when I was working on this, because I feel that Scream performs worse in DD3 than Carnage, but she performs better in DD4, and you're more likely to bring her in DD4 because she's much cheaper in terms of unique. So I think you can really go either way. They're kind of in the same tier here, but I think that's a choice, and a lot of newer players may not even have both at the same star level anyways, but I agree that that's a debate.
Yeah, so the idea is Scream is going to need to be, because she's a little bit squishy. So you're going to need a higher red and higher star if you're making that consideration where Carnage is widely farmable. But if Scream suddenly shows up on a node and is available to the general public besides wallet farming, then I think that's something to take into consideration. But I do think that if money wasn't an option, or if you had access to these characters and had them pretty well built up from her event, that would be the way to go. And I do like Doc Ock. He is one of my favorite characters, and I do think Venom is, while a great character, he is just really expensive from the DD4 perspective. He's a full 90.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's why he's there. I went through City in DD3 using the 3 original symbiotes of SSM, Carnage, and Venom, and I one-shot all the nodes before ISO. I mean, Venom performed well, but you don't really bring him to DD4 because of his cost, and he's the slowest one. He's usually the character you'll leave off if you hybridize the symbiote team. So I put him all the way to the right, but I wanted to have a chart that everyone could use. So if you're a free-to-play player, you don't have Anti-Venom and Scream, you're still going to find 3 symbiotes on here that you're going to be able to farm and use.
Yeah, and if you got a chance to get Doc Ock in the second event. So the good news is I've actually gone through Dark Dimension 3 5 times, and as just kind of testing out new characters, and I agree 100% with this list. I think these are the ones that performed pretty well. In fact, if I actually will say that some of these characters were able to auto some of the sections, because that's my favorite button to push, besides my wife's buttons, but that's another story. So we're gonna get right into it. Philosopher, thank you very much. I'm gonna set up this link where they'll be able to take a look at this image. I'm gonna set it up so they can view this image on the video here, so it'll be available to them. You'll see all of Discord, all of Philosopher's information, including his Discord, his channels, and make sure you throw him a follow. Again, a great resource for the community. And anything you want to add here?
Other than just make sure that you're looking ahead on your roster and investing carefully, and this infographic will hopefully help you do that.
Yeah, and are you planning on potentially updating this one over time?
Yeah, that's the plan. I'm already updating my DD4 infographic and working on that next, so I'll keep this up to date.
Perfect. All right. I appreciate your time, and remember, I do things so you don't have to, and Philosopher does things better, and we'll check you soon.